I sat at my new empty desk and opened my laptop. I found the hidden spreadsheet one last time. I opened it. $68,420. All those years, all that invisible labor, all that hope, all condensed into one pathetic number. I sat at my new empty desk and opened my laptop. I found the hidden spreadsheet one last time. I opened it. $68,420. All those years, all that invisible labor, all that hope, all condensed into one pathetic number. I graduated high school 3 days ago. My graduation party was supposed to be tonight. For the first time in my entire life, I wasn't responsible for anyone's happiness but my own. And I was. I was happy. The icon vanished. It was done. The icon vanished. It was done. The worst part, they didn't tell me. I spent the entire day blissfully unaware. I was in the backyard hanging string lights. I baked 3 dozen cookies from scratch. I set up the drink station. I was genuinely excited. For the first time, I thought maybe they were finally celebrating me. By 7 p.m., no one had arrived. I kept checking my phone, but there was nothing. By 8, my stomach started to hurt. By 9, I knew something was deeply fundamentally wrong. I graduated high school 3 days ago. My graduation party was supposed to be tonight. Mom, Dad, where is everyone? We're taught that family is an unconditional bond, that blood is thicker than water. But that's a lie. It's a trap. It's the excuse toxic people use to keep you tethered to their dysfunction. They make you believe that walking away isn't just selfish, it's a sin. And my parents, they just agreed. They didn't hesitate, they didn't argue. They just immediately started sending cancellation messages to every single person I had invited. My friends, our relatives, everyone. We had to cancel the party, my dad Brian said, like he was telling me the mail had arrived. Chloe is just so devastated about her trip. She's in a very fragile emotional state right now. It just didn't feel appropriate to celebrate. I stared at them. The string lights were twinkling in the backyard. The cookies were cooling on the counter. And they had known all day that no one was coming. They had watched me decorate for a party they had already canceled. A fragile emotional state, I repeated. She's 22 years old. You don't understand what this trip meant for her brand, Claire, my mom said, finally pausing the TV. It was a major opportunity. We just need to be supportive of her right now. 18 years. 18 years of my achievements being minimized. 18 years of my feelings being dismissed. All to manage the emotions of my older, supposedly adult sister. This wasn't just a canceled party. This was the last straw. Have you ever felt like the invisible one in your own family? Let me know your story down in the comments. The rage that had been simmering inside me for 18 years finally boiled over. It wasn't a quiet sadness. It was a storm. We're taught that family is an unconditional bond, that blood is thicker than water. But that's a lie. It's a trap. It's the excuse toxic people use to keep you tethered to their dysfunction. They make you believe that walking away isn't just selfish, it's a sin. My mother, Stephanie, actually flinched. Claire, lower your voice. You're getting hysterical. Hysterical? I have a right to be hysterical. You canceled my graduation party, my one party for her. She's 22. She's supposed to be an adult, but you treat her like a fragile doll and me like I'm nothing. That's not true, my father Brian said, finally standing up. We love you both equally. No, you don't, I shouted, tears finally coming hot and angry. You don't. You tolerate me and you worship her. When did you ever come to one of my debate tournaments? Not once. But Chloe needs a new ring light for her Instagram, and you drive to 3 different stores to find the perfect one. Do you even know what I'm majoring in next year? Do you even care? Before they could answer, a voice drifted down from the stairs. What is all this noise about? I just stood there. You. What? You. You did this, I said, my voice dropping to a low growl. She sighed a dramatic put-upon sound. Oh, Claire, are you really throwing a tantrum over a party? God, I'm dealing with a major career crisis. My entire LA trip just fell apart. Maybe you could show a little compassion for once, instead of making everything about you. That's when I snapped. The lecture on compassion coming from her after she had deliberately and selfishly ruined my night, it broke something inside me. I don't even remember thinking. I just moved. I lunged at her, grabbing a handful of that perfect, expensive hair. She shrieked, and we tumbled onto the floor. It wasn't a graceful fight. It was 18 years of resentment. I was screaming, she was scratching. My mother was yelling, "Stop it! Stop it! You'll ruin her skin." My father was trying to pull me off, her yelling, "Claire, that's enough." The entire scene was chaotic. My mother was crying, Chloe was cursing, and I was just fueled by a white-hot rage that I never knew I possessed. The worst part, they didn't tell me. We all froze. The ringing was loud, sharp, and insistent in the sudden silence. My father was trying to pull me off, her yelling, "Claire, that's enough." "Who is that?" my mother whispered frantically, trying to fix her hair. And right in the middle of it, all the doorbell rang. Standing on our doorstep was my great-aunt Teresa. You don't understand. Aunt Teresa wasn't just any relative. She was the family matriarch, a retired federal judge. She was a woman who commanded respect not because she was loud, but because she was brilliant, precise, and had absolutely zero tolerance for nonsense. My parents, especially my mother, were terrified of her. She stood there perfectly poised in a tailored pantsuit, looking at the scene of our wrecked living room, at Chloe's tear-streaked, furious face, and at me still breathing hard on the floor. "Well," Aunt Teresa said, her voice dangerously quiet, "this is quite a welcome. I was in town for a case and thought I'd surprise you for Claire's graduation. It seems the surprise is mine. Would someone care to explain what exactly is going on?" My mother, Stephanie, immediately jumped into damage control mode, smoothing her clothes and forcing a laugh. "Teresa, what a surprise. We were just, well, you know how girls are, just a silly sisterly spat. Everything is fine." Aunt Teresa's eyes didn't move from mine. She looked right past my mother. "I'm not talking to you, Stephanie. I'm talking to Claire. What happened?" My father tried next. "Now, Teresa, it's really not a big deal. The girls just got a little overheated." "Brian," she said, and that one word cut through the air like a blade. "Stop talking." She looked at me, her gaze steady and unwavering. "Claire, tell me." And for the first time in my life, someone in that house was actually asking to hear my side of the story, and they were someone who couldn't be ignored. The dam broke. "She canceled my graduation party," I said, my voice shaking, pointing at my mother. "They both did. They canceled it this morning and didn't tell me. They let me decorate the entire backyard. They let me wait all night for guests who were never coming." "Why?" Aunt Teresa asked, her voice dangerously low. "Because she," I said, turning to Chloe, "was upset. Her flight to LA got canceled, and she told them, 'If I can't have fun, then neither can she.' And they agreed. They chose her tantrum over my graduation." "That is not what happened," my mother interrupted. "We were trying to manage a difficult situation." "No," I said, finding a strength I didn't know I had. "That's what you always do. This isn't just about a party, Aunt Teresa. It's about 18 years of this. 18 years of being the invisible one." I started pacing, the words pouring out of me. "Do you know what it's like? When I won the state debate championship, my mom said, 'That's nice, honey,' and then spent an hour on the phone helping Chloe pick a theme for an Instagram post. When I got my acceptance letter to UGA, my dad glanced at it and said, 'Good, at least you're practical,' and then went back to balancing the books. But Chloe gets a bad haircut, and this entire house goes into a 3-day mourning period." I looked at my parents, who were staring at me in genuine shock, as if they'd never heard any of this before. "Why are you so obsessed with her? Why is she the only one who matters?" I stopped and took a shaky breath, the final, awful piece of the puzzle clicking into place. "You don't understand, Aunt Teresa," I said, my voice suddenly cold. "It's not just favoritism. It's a business decision." Aunt Teresa raised an eyebrow. "Explain." "Dad's company, Brian's PR firm, it's failing. It's been failing for years. I see the letters. I hear the late-night phone calls. They're broke. And Chloe. She's not their daughter. She's their brand. She's their one successful asset. She's the only thing they have left to show the world that they're not failures." This was the illusion of power from an empty wallet. Their entire sense of self, their status in our wealthy Alpharetta neighborhood, wasn't built on what they were, it was built on what they had. And right now, all they had was Chloe's curated, fake influencer lifestyle. They weren't protecting their daughter, they were protecting their last asset. Their cruelty to me wasn't personal. It was just the cost of doing business, the price of maintaining the illusion. "They're not just being cruel, Aunt Teresa," I said, the realization hitting me with its full weight. "They're desperate." Aunt Teresa stared at my parents, who both looked like they'd been slapped. She had a look on her face I'd never seen before, a cold, calculating clarity. She finally understood. "Stephanie." "Brian," she said, her voice like ice. "Get your coats. We need to go to my lawyer's office. Right now, you're going to explain everything." Aunt Teresa was ready to take them to her lawyer right then at 10 o'clock at night. She was already grabbing her car keys. But I held up a hand. "Wait," I said. Everyone looked at me. It was the first time I'd ever interrupted her. Aunt Teresa, thank you. But before you do that, I need to do something first. I turned to my parents who were standing there pale and defeated. The power in the room had shifted. It was no longer their house. It was a stage, and they were no longer the directors. I have a condition, I said, my voice surprisingly cold and clear. You're right, Chloe is 22. She's an adult with a job. She needs to move out, permanently. My mother, Stephanie, started to protest. Claire, that's her home. We can't just... That's my ultimatum, I said, cutting her off. You have 1 week. Chloe moves out, and you two go to therapy with me to actually fix this. If you do that, I'll consider asking Aunt Teresa to help you. And if we don't, my father, Brian asked, his voice barely a whisper. If you don't, I said, then I'm leaving. And Aunt Teresa can do whatever she thinks is best. You can have Chloe or you can have your financial stability. But you don't get both. You have 1 week to decide. I picked up my backpack, walked over to my aunt, and said, Can I stay with you tonight? For as long as you need, Claire, she said, putting a protective arm around me. We walked out, leaving them standing in the ruins of my canceled party in the middle of their perfect hollow living room. The next few days were a masterclass in manipulation. My parents, realizing their financial lifeline was now attached to me, started the campaign. The texts began almost immediately. First from my mother. Claire, honey, I know you're hurt. We're so sorry you feel this way, but you've always been the strong one. You're the one who understands things. Chloe is just fragile. I didn't respond. Then my father tried. Your mother is a wreck. You're tearing this family apart over one party. Is that really what you want? We're your parents. We love you. Don't do this to us. I didn't respond. They tried gaslighting me, pretending the whole thing was just a misunderstanding. They tried bargaining, saying they would make it up to me with a different party, a trip, anything. Before they could answer, a voice drifted down from the stairs. What is all this noise about? I sat in Aunt Teresa's quiet guest room, my phone buzzing on the table, and I felt nothing. No guilt, no sadness, just a cold, hard clarity. This wasn't an ultimatum, it was a test, and I already knew they were going to fail. The final message came on the 5th day. It was from my father. We've been talking, and we've decided. We choose Chloe. She's our daughter, and she needs us. We don't need your aunt's support, and frankly, we don't want it. My brother-in-law, my mother's brother, has agreed to invest in the company. We're fine. You've made your choice, and we've made ours. Don't contact us again. I showed the text to Aunt Teresa. She read it, her expression unreadable. I see, she said. So your uncle is getting involved. Apparently. Interesting, she said, pulling out her phone. He always was a fool. She looked up at me, her gaze steady. Claire, there's something I should have told you. Your parents. They aren't just struggling. Their company isn't failing. It failed. Years ago. It's bankrupt. I just stared at her. What? I've been paying their bills, she said, her voice flat. All of them. The mortgage on that house, the lease on Brian's car, Chloe's tuition, her influencer trips. I've been secretly funding their entire life for years, hoping they would eventually get back on their feet. She shook her head, a flicker of deep disappointment in her eyes. I thought they would at least have the decency to protect you. I see now that was a mistake. She dialed a number, and her entire demeanor shifted. The warm aunt disappeared, replaced by the federal judge. Michael, she said, her voice like ice. It's Teresa. Good morning. I need you to file the paperwork immediately. Yes, the Alpharetta property. Initiate the repossession. 30 days notice, effective immediately. They've defaulted on our agreement. She listened for a moment. No, that won't be a problem. Their new investor will back out the second he hears my name. Send the server out today. Thank you. She hung up. Just like that. In less than 30 seconds, she had dismantled their entire world. I watched her as she stood by the window, her back to me, and I realized this wasn't an act of anger. It was an execution. It was the result of a long, silent, and painful internal conflict. My aunt had been watching this unfold for years. She wasn't a savior who just swooped in. She was a watcher. She had been trapped, caught between the faint hope that her sister, my mother, would finally change, and the devastating reality of what that hope was costing me. She had spent years regretting her silence, weighing her loyalty to her sister against the quiet destruction of her niece. She was waiting for a sign for one single moment that would prove beyond a shadow of a doubt that they were beyond saving. And when they canceled my graduation party, they didn't just break my heart. They gave my aunt the final piece of evidence she needed. It wasn't the reason she acted. It was just the last straw that finally gave her permission to execute the judgment she had been holding back for years. She hadn't just been waiting to strike, she had been grieving what she knew she would have to do. My parents, completely unaware of the bomb Aunt Teresa had just detonated, sent their final cruel message later that day. They thought they were delivering the killing blow. "We've been talking," my father's text read, "and we've decided. We choose Chloe. She's our daughter and she needs us. We don't need your aunt's support, and frankly, we don't want it. My brother-in-law, my mother's brother, has agreed to invest in the company. We're fine. You've made your choice and we've made ours. Don't contact us again." They thought they had won. They thought they had found another lifeline, another fool to fund their fantasy. They thought they were finally officially cutting me off. I showed the text to Aunt Teresa. She read it once, then twice, her expression tightening. They thought they had won. They thought they had found another lifeline, another fool to fund their fantasy. They thought they were finally officially cutting me off. That was it. I showed the text to Aunt Teresa. She read it once, then twice, her expression tightening. My father tore it open right there on the doorstep. His face went from confusion to disbelief to a sickly ashen gray. He stumbled back a step, leaning against the doorframe for support. "What is that?" I asked, joining my aunt in the foyer. "That," she said, "is a 30-day eviction notice." I was confused. Eviction, but they're just defaulting. It'll take months for the bank to foreclose. "The bank isn't foreclosing, Claire," Aunt Teresa said, turning to look at me. And this is when the final, darkest secret was revealed. "The house doesn't belong to them. It's never belonged to them." "What are you talking about?" "It belongs to me," she said. "It was your grandmother's, my mother's property. When she passed, she left it to me with the understanding that I would let Stephanie and her family live there as long as they needed. They've been living there rent-free for over 20 years, telling everyone in Alpharetta that it was their house, that they were the successful ones. They didn't just hide their failure. They built their entire life on a foundation of lies. They weren't just bad parents. They were con artists. Their perfect life, their status, Chloe's expensive lifestyle. It was all a performance funded by my aunt's generosity and built on a criminal-level deception. The collapse was immediate and absolute. That," she said softly, "is no longer my concern." "Teresa, what's this? I hear about you evicting Stephanie. I'm repossessing my property, Mark. The occupants are no longer welcome." "But the business I was going to invest?" I was confused. "Eviction, but they're just defaulting. It'll take months for the bank to foreclose." He hung up. The new investment was gone just like that. That evening, they showed up at Aunt Teresa's house. Not just my father, but my mother, too. They weren't angry anymore. They were broken. "Teresa, please, my mother," Stephanie wept, standing on the front porch. I watched from the living room window, a silent ghost in my own story. "You can't do this. We'll be homeless. Where will we go?" "What about Chloe?" That evening, they showed up at Aunt Teresa's house. Not just my father, but my mother, too. They weren't angry anymore. They were broken. "It was Claire," my father spat, his desperation turning to blame. "She put you up to this?" "Claire did nothing but tell the truth," Aunt Teresa said. "You did this. You made a choice. You chose your pride over your child. You chose lies over honesty. And now you have to live with it." She shook her head, a flicker of deep disappointment in her eyes. "I thought they would at least have the decency to protect you. I see now that was a mistake." "You should have thought of that," my aunt replied, not opening the screen door. "That," she said softly, "is no longer my concern." Aunt Teresa looked at her, and I saw that deep, profound sadness in her eyes again. The grief for a sister she could no longer save. I didn't feel happy. I didn't feel triumphant. I just felt quiet. The noise in my head. The 18 years of trying to be good enough, of wondering what was wrong with me. It was finally silent. I didn't feel happy. I didn't feel triumphant. I just felt quiet. The noise in my head. The 18 years of trying to be good enough, of wondering what was wrong with me. It was finally silent. Just as Aunt Teresa predicted, the perfect Alpharetta life my parents had built on lies evaporated. They were forced to leave the home they had pretended to own for 20 years and move into a cramped 2-bedroom rental apartment on the other side of town. The shame, the downgrade, was absolute. She closed the heavy oak door, turned the deadbolt, and walked away, leaving them crying on her porch. "It's for the person who always had to be the strong one, the responsible one, the one who never asked for anything because you knew you'd never get it. It's for the person who watched year after year as your siblings were celebrated while your achievements were met with silence. And me, I thrived. Aunt Teresa was true to her word. She funded my education. I got accepted to the University of Georgia, and I moved into a dorm room that felt more like home than my house in Alpharetta ever had. My best friend Trevor ended up at a college nearby, and we saw each other almost every weekend. I found my people. I joined the debate club. I made friends who actually listened, who asked about my day and cared about the answer. The fall was hardest on Chloe. Without the financial backing to maintain her influencer lifestyle, without the big house to use as a backdrop, her brand crumbled. She couldn't handle the failure. She couldn't stand being associated with their new modest life. Sometimes I'll be walking across campus or sitting in the library with the sun streaming through the window, and I'll just stop, and I'll breathe, and I'll feel it. Freedom. This story isn't just about what happened to me. It's for everyone who's ever felt like they were on the edge of their own family. I'm studying psychology now. I want to understand why families break, why people do what they do, and how to heal from it. I want you to know something. You are not invisible. Your worth is not determined by their inability to see it. You don't have to set yourself on fire to keep them warm. You don't have to make yourself small to fit into the tiny space they've allowed for you. The bravest thing you will ever do is to stop asking for their approval and to give it to yourself. Choose you. Choose your peace. Choose your future. It is not an act of betrayal. It is the ultimate act of survival.